So you obviously have a tremendous amount of data. As you've seen many people come and go through the Techstars programs now all around the United States and around the world. Obviously, I would imagine you've honed your, call it, acceptance formula over the years, maybe to see just where your network is strongest versus not. For folks that might apply to Techstars, where is sort of the sweet spot nowadays for what you would deem to be a more likely candidate that has a chance of acceptance?
Sure. I mean, so we're now seeing 12,000 companies a year applying for around 100 spots across the network. So, 1% or less acceptance rate. I think at this point it's so competitive that you really need some progress on your idea. So, just submitting an application with some great idea is probably not enough anymore. You have to make a little progress on it. So I have this theory that entrepreneurs do stuff instead of just talking about stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of a minimum bar filter for us. There was a great conversation on our internal list the other day with our managing directors around the country, where one of them was saying, somebody, broke the rule on the application form. They submitted, an answer that was too long or whatever. And I suggested to the group, some of the best entrepreneurs break the rules, right? They value their time highly. Like, don't exclude them on that basis. So there is no rule. Mm-hmm. We're really looking for exceptional teams. Probably they've already built at least some kind of prototype. And I think there's another misconception out there, which is, that if you got any kind of funding whatsoever, it's not appropriate for Techstars. We're seeing companies come in pretty routinely now with some kind of smaller angel round or even $1 million or $2 million in early venture capital, and that sort of revenue as well. So we view all of that as really at the starting line. Mm-hmm. Great team. Obviously looking for a market that we think is really interesting, and some progress at least on the idea is a sweet spot.
Are there certain markets or industries which you find to be, you have more interest in, that you feel like you're stronger network in?
Yeah, I mean, look, each of the managing directors has those things, so the different locations all have a little bit of that draw. From my perspective, there's some things that I'm personally, really excited about. I love this sort of work that's going on with, the sharing economy, and particularly around imbalanced marketplaces. Mm-hmm. So, as an angel in Uber, for example, right, the idea that, we need more efficiencies. So, why can't I just pull out my phone and order a car, right? Mm-hmm. And why do I have to pay for it? It's just, more convenience. And the marketplace was very imbalanced towards the owners of these companies. And what Uber did is really shifted that to the drivers, who now say, this changed my life, right? So there are a lot of marketplaces where people still hold power that doesn't make sense, that we can shift. So we're interested in that. We're interested in human-computer interaction. We're generating more data today than, this year than in the history of humanity, right? We're just generating enormous amounts of data, and we don't know how to access that data. We need new ways to interact with computers, right, that allow us to tap into that. So Oblong, if you remember Minority Report, mm-hmm. I'm an investor in that company that, uses gesture to control computers and imagery. And it's just it's only a matter of time before we need those sorts of techniques to access data. So those are a couple of areas. There's a few more that I focus on.
Mm-hmm. So now you have obviously members in the Techstars program. They get accepted. They're now in the program itself. Throughout the years, have you noticed any what we'll call preventable mistakes or consistent issues that you have worked with your mentors to solve early on based on previous experience? And what have some of those preventable mistakes been?
Well, the two big startup killers, in my view, from watching 400 companies, right? One is there's just no market for what they're doing. That's a pretty preventable thing. I mean, if you surround yourself with great people and you do the right kind of sort of lean startup testing and get in front of customers, you can prevent it. The other big startup killer is just team problems. So one of the biggest things that I think I give as advice all the time is simply to answer some questions together. So Brad Feld and I wrote this book called Do More Faster, and there's a chapter in there about the checklist. Dharmesh Shah actually contributed it, where if you just talk about what happens if one of us leaves, what happens if one of us puts money in, you can prevent so many future problems in the team just by talking about them up front. It doesn't even necessarily have to all be written down. It's probably better if you do. But that's a great checklist for those sorts of things. So team problems are often very preventable if you talk enough up front.
So if team, let's say, is one of or the biggest issue that you work to solve actively, what about great teams? What are some of the attributes that you've seen that you just know these guys, if it's not this business in the future, maybe, but they're a great team? What defines a great team?
So I like to talk about sources of passion. I mean, you have to have a place that it's coming from that's more than just, I want to make some money. That doesn't work. I mean, sometimes it does, but usually it has to be coming from a place of passion. So people always say, oh yeah, passion, I've heard that before. What does that really mean? I like to dig into what is the source of that? Where does that come from? Why are you doing this? So those are a lot of the questions we ask up front. As an example, many people will cite, I have the problem, right? I'm solving a problem for myself. And say, if you're not solving a problem for yourself, then you're not going to build a good business. That's not true. I had a company my first company I ever did called Pinpoint Technologies is now part of Zoll Medical. It's a NASDAQ company. We were dispatching ambulances for people who needed help. And I'll tell you, it's really easy to get passion if you go out and experience that, about saving people's lives and helping them. I didn't start with passion for that. I didn't have any medical history. I've been lucky in that sense. But when you're around it, you can get passionate for it. So where does it come from in the entrepreneurs? And if they light up and they talk about, well, I saw this ambulance and it went to the wrong address and someone, didn't get the service that they needed and it was really bad, that's a source of passion. ScriptPad, another one of our companies, a medical prescription had almost killed his father because it was scribbled on a notepad, right? He said, I'm not going to let that happen to other people. So it doesn't have to be your problem, but you have to identify with it, and you have to have a true source of that passion to get through those hard times.